So the mempool is about to clear any hour now. It could be 5 or 6 hours. Bitcoin's fee rates have been ultra low, and we are about to see perhaps the first full mempool clearing event in years on Bitcoin. And what does that mean? That means runes are dead. Bitcoin also crashed all the way from $108,000 to I think $91,000. So it's doom and gloom. Welcome to Bitcoin Season 2. Yeah, so the title of this episode is Runes Do or Die Moment. Welcome to Bitcoin Season 2, produced by Blockspace Media. This is the live stream. I do kind of topical, often like metrics overviews on Monday afternoons here on Bitcoin Season 2, streaming live on Twitter and X. But the interesting thing this time is that, I've done a lot of material on like runes metrics, runes up or down. And the short TLDR is that runes are very, very down right now. In fact, they are so down that they've crossed below the important $1 billion threshold that Casey defined. But before we go to that, I'm going to paint a narrative here, which is that it's not just runes, but it is kind of like all Bitcoin metrics across the board. So let me go to mempool.space. So this is the tried and trusty mempool.space. Now we are seeing an uncharacteristic surge in transactions. Right now, if you want to send a transaction to get in the next block, it would cost you 10 sats per VByte, or maybe a couple bucks if you're sending like a normal transaction. But I mean, if you look at this, fee rates over the past few days have been in the single sat, 1 to 2 sat per VByte range. In fact, if we go to this chart on mempool.space, which shows kind of the depth, the transactions that are sitting and waiting, we can see, lots of activity over the past year, but it's been declining. And really since December, we are seeing mempools across like the average median mempool start eating into this single sat per VByte strata here. So if you're listening and you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, you send all these transactions on Bitcoin. If you see that, and if you send them with a really low fee rate, the nodes across the network will hold that transaction in their mempool, and they will wait until it makes sense to include that transaction into a block. So sometimes, if the fee rate is high for a long time, and the transactions that are in the mempool kind of is like waiting place to be included into a block, if the fee rates on those transactions are really low, they'll just sit there for days, months even. And so what we're seeing is the transactions which have been sitting here for months are now finally clearing. And Mononautical, contributor and with the mempool.space team, talks about this, made some very interesting tweets observing this past week. In particular, this tweet here, quote, "The mempool is so dead that we are clearing entire blocks worth of months-old dusting attacks spam at 1.03 sats per VByte." If you don't know what a dusting attack is, it's a really like cheap way for people to send a bunch of transactions to your wallet for basically no cost to them, which try to trick your wallet into, whenever you send a transaction down the road, try to trick your wallet into accidentally sending Bitcoin to the wrong address. You can basically make it look like you're sending transactions from an address that other wallet does own, but the actual specific address is a little bit different. So these dusting attacks are common during low fee rate environments like this past week. So right now you see old dusting attacks happen, and they now those transactions are being included into blocks. And what Mononaut also observes is that, quote, "Not even runes or inscriptions are willing to outbid this stuff." That means that even though fee rates are at an all-time low, the activity on in runes and ordinals and inscriptions is so low that there's nobody really left to buy this next marginal block space, even at this low rate. And then Mononaut also mentions that there are some people still inscribing the large inscriptions, the large ordinals via Marathon Slipstream service. He makes a criticism about them looking like the AI slop, the AI generated image. Here's a good one. It's the space block. I just think it's kind of funny that this is the type of thing being inscribed right now. But yeah, the TLDR is like, if you have a giant file you want to put on Bitcoin, it's very easy to do that right now. It's very cheap to do that right now. And you can use a service like Marathon's Slipstream to inscribe giant files for basically no cost. Which gets into what does the actual transaction activity look like on Bitcoin? Well, I'm going to go to Merch's Dune dashboard here. And this is a chart, and this is the only chart I'm really going to focus on, which is this chart shows, like, of all the transactions that are happening on Bitcoin, what percentage are which? And we can see here, and I've brought this up many times before, this pink color here is just normal, regular transactions, like sending Bitcoin from A to B. Maybe it's your DCAs, or maybe it's just transferring Bitcoin from point A to point B. And ordinals and inscriptions are roughly half of that activity, depending on the day. Basically, most of 2023. And then 2024 rolls around, and runes launch, and runes quickly become the majority of transactions by number of transactions on Bitcoin starting April 20th, the halving day this past year, the launch of the Runes protocol. But as Runes as an ecosystem has failed to pump to the numbers that a lot of the participants really want, that has resulted in just decaying interest in new Runes activity. People will try to, some people may attribute this to how difficult they are to trade. I wrote an article for a previous newsletter on the batching trading issue. But for whatever reason, of which there maybe are multiple, this green section here is declining since September. Runes as a percentage of overall number of transactions on Bitcoin has been declining steadily since December. One interesting thing to note is that this blue section here is BRC20s. BRC20s, you remember that BRC20, the token standard popular in China, those have been increasing in overall percentage of number of transactions in a Bitcoin block. They've been increasing since September. So right now, the average Bitcoin block is actually, get this, about 30% BRC20 transactions and about 60 to 65% regular transactions, to a de minimis 3% Runes transactions. So right now, about a third of every Bitcoin block by number of transactions is BRC20, the old OG ordinals token meta protocol. Who would have thought you would see this? So then I have, I need to share my screen again. I have this chart from Genie Data, which shows that the overall Runes market cap, which peaked in mid-November at a little over $2 billion, has been on a steady decline and is now at $966 million, which is below $1 billion. And if you remember, I've referenced it multiple times in this. If you remember, Casey jokingly said, if Runes does not achieve a $1 billion market cap, I will commit seppuku, which isn't obviously internet slang, and he has to die in shame. Well, it's now under $1 billion, so Casey does in fact now have to commit Sudoku. The other interesting chart that I want to show you is this. I'll leave you with a little bit of hopium from one of my new favorite data accounts, skychirp.sats. Skychirp Logic is the account name. And they've been running some interesting Python tools and putting together some really interesting data visualizations showing like just stuff happening in the Bitcoin Season 2 ecosystem. And this is a chart showing Runes daily prices since December 2024 is the bottom near. And if you're listening, I'll describe the chart to you. So it's a chart which shows the normalized unit price in Satoshis of your top tokens, your top runes tokens over time from the beginning of December to present. And what we can see is that a lot of the popular runes tokens, Cypher, Dog, $1 billion cat, were roughly flat through the first 2 weeks of December and started declining mid-December to about present. And but what we saw is that their normalized unit price, basically the relative decline of them, has decreased in the past couple weeks. Is this a bottom? I don't know. I don't want to try to sell you guys hopium or anything. I will just be very clear. Like, if you remember, when Casey originally came up with the runes concept in his blog, he said, make no mistake, tokens are a endless pit of avarice and greed, and you should not touch these. So his disclaimer is pretty obvious that this is totally a grab bag. Up to you, listener, if you wish to participate in this casino. But if you're a gambling person, you can try to pull out whatever charts you want and try to justify that this is a rune's bottom. So I'm not going to belabor this point too much more, except just to say I'm watching this. I'll probably do a little bit of a deeper dive on these charts and metrics of how down bad runes are, and maybe to try to like qualify it, introduce some new metrics for you in the newsletter on Blockspace Media. Go to newsletter.blockspacemedia.com and make sure to like and subscribe. But other than that, that's all I've got for today, you all. Runes are down, but it's really just Bitcoin transaction activity overall, which is extremely down. See you next week.